Thank you so much for joining us today on Take 10. We come to you every week with a look at a mental health or related issue as they relate to caregiving and care recipients. I'm Ron Arron, along with our co-host, Carol Zernial, on special assignment today, and filling in is our friend Tina Smith, who you've heard here before. Tina is the Senior Director of Caregiver Program Operations for the Caregiver SOS program through the WellMed Charitable Foundation. She's well known across the country for her work in caregiving, and she's been with the Caregiver SOS program for over 8 years. Dr. Jamie Huysman is a nationally known psychotherapist, an expert on caregiving and addictions as well, and many of you know his work in that area. And Dr. Jamie, a question for you for today's Take 10. Is it okay for a caregiver to keep secrets from the care recipient? Let's say you learn a diagnosis a doctor has shared with you because there's no HIPAA problem, HIPAA releases have been signed, and it turns out your care recipient is on the road to very serious dementia, or that cancer is terminal, whatever it may be. Can you keep a secret, and should you?
Wow, that is such an amazing question, because coming from the addictions world and rehab world, obviously we have a saying, secrets make you sick, right? So that is the truth. You know, the more we keep things in, the more we compartmentalize, the more we push in our system, the more our inflammation, or if you will, our adrenal glands, whatever you say, the body does not work well with secrets. However, there are pros, there are cons when it comes to caregiving. And so Tina knows, as we talked in the last show, about metrics and about our life shifting, and maybe we do have to do things slightly different. So, you know, there's always a pro about this. I mean, to me, I've often seen many years, and I've been in healthcare for 30 years, that if you don't impart the severity of a diagnosis to a loved one, believe this or not, and this is obviously a pro for secrets, their confidence in their ability to recover usually goes up. Go figure, right? Rather than giving the worst possible information, we give that we don't do that. And
so if you don't say to them, by the way, you're on the road to death in maybe 6 months, if you keep that a secret, they may do very well.
Absolutely. And that there is really, actually, believe it or not, some research that says that's true. Also, keeping secrets has a pro for the caregiver in some ways, because it kind of buys time. I think, it allows us to create strategies. It's almost a buffering, if you will. And it allows us to worry less about the actual intervention, or plan better for the intervention. But I will also say this, though, when the partner or caregiver or loved one, or whomever you're keeping a secret from, actually finds out, it's much, much worse. So we have to be very cautious as to what we keep. Like, I'll use an example, pain management issues. I know when I work with clients, there are times when I'll say to caregivers, you may not want to read the old contraindications to your loved one. You know, you hear it on commercials, right? Everything and anything could happen if you take this. You may want to hold back and not give too much information. So I guess the long-winded way of saying this, you really got to be judicious as what you're keeping secret, how you're keeping a secret if you are, and figure out ways over time with loved ones and other caregivers how to really deal with the secret, whether you do connect with your caree or not.
So when they find out, if they find out, and normally secrets come out, they'll be really PO'd at you.
Yeah, worse yet, they'll be so dysregulated they may not trust you afterwards when they really need to trust you.
What does dysregulated mean?
Well, their body will say, look, I'm walking on eggshells. Truth and safety, and we call it neurological safety, comes when the other person you know is somebody who you can count on, rely on, consistent. They meet you halfway. They say what they need to say to you. You say what you need to say to them. And secrets aren't even a part of that entire equation. Now, again, I don't live life in the black and white, and I don't ask my clients to, because we have values that keep us right in the gray. So there are maybe times to really buffer the process, meaning figure out a way to really impart it, but buy time in the process, because yes, you're right. Once that secret's out, the secret's out.
So, I don't know that we ought to book that cruise for next summer.
Oh, I would book it. And I look for a good cancel, and I look for at least 2 month cancellation date on it. How's that?
Tina, do you get this question from caregivers?
Well, we get, especially we do, especially around the idea or if the care recipient has dementia, how much, is it okay to lie to somebody with dementia? And when it comes to that disease, we often tell them that it is. And in that we call them fiblets, kind of therapeutic lies, because oftentimes with the person with dementia, they're not going to remember what's really true. And then if they ask again, then they've got to go through that whole process again.
Hold that thought. I'm going to come right back to you. I love that term, fiblets. I'm Ron Arron, along with Dr. Jamie Huysman. Tina Smith filling in today for Carol Zernial. You're listening to Take 10 if you just joined us. And as we talk about fiblets, Dr. Jamie, I guess it doesn't matter if you lie to someone with dementia because, as Tina said, they'll never remember anyhow.
I love what Tina's saying, and she's 100% right. When it comes to neurological disorders, especially those that you decompensate over time, and things are going to happen, slowly, organically, over time. I think you really need to understand what the concept of fiblets are, because it is a protection of both yourself, a protection of others. Again, going back to those research studies that pouring out your heart that you got a terminal illness, there's no hope. That's not the best way of going at anything, because the person really will believe that, especially if their self-esteem is dropping. So it's really the fiblets are definitely applied to neurological disorders that really are going to decompensate over time, but still we need to be mindful of it. And the second thing I'm going to say to the audience too, that if you are handling these difficult secrets or trying to deal with fiblets, really you got to get inside to the therapist and talk about it and really get validation from a third party. Not whether you should do it or not. This is an absolute autonomous, independent decision. This is not up to a therapist, but processing the discomfort that you may have, because I think we have to be right with our own light too.
I was going to ask, is there guilt that comes with keeping those secrets? Do they build up inside you, eat away at you, and pump cortisol?
They do. I mean, they do. But to sometimes the secrets, as we were talking about here, and as Tina points out, is more important, than to actually vomit out the truth when it absolutely will do nobody any good. And in this case that she's talking about, that is the case. And yes, it does, though, eat away at us, even when we have that logical sort of decision to make there. And that's why I think we need to see a good therapist during caregiving anyway. I really believe this is a vital thing to have a third party to process things with, so that we can come comfortable, or we can come neurosafe, I'll say, with the idea that we're dealing with fiblets. Because I love that concept too, Tina, but I think Tina's spot on.
I think, when we talk to caregivers about this, it's often around somebody that has passed away. If the person with dementia is asking for somebody that's passed away, if the caregiver initially, that tells them that first time that person has passed away, they're going to go through the grieving process. But that it's very likely that the person living with dementia may bring that up over and over, over a period of time. And each time you tell them that person has passed away, they're going to go through that grieving process. And so that's where we encourage, I guess, for lack of a better word, of the fiblets. You don't have to necessarily, you can say things like, well, they'll be back later, or do you remember, it's maybe a memory from way back when, or tell me about when you all got married. Redirect the conversation, but be mindful that if you keep telling them that person passed away, they're going to go through the grieving process. Just like each and every time.
I love that. But again, so everybody clinically can understand this one too. What you're saying makes so much sense. We also have to have a good therapist to figure out if we're actually going to remind or thinking of reminding somebody about something is about us or is it about them? So maybe we haven't really come to grips sometimes. And unfortunately, we work out, I call it projection. We work out our stuff on our loved ones. And so that's why therapy is really good. It gets all this out in another safe environment. And with time and also with the help of counseling, I believe, the secrets and what the requisite truths are going to be uncovered, addressed, and so will the guilt that Ron was talking about.
Thank you. Got to stop you right there, Dr. Jamie Huysman. Tina Smith, I'm Ron Arron. Thanks for joining us on Take 10.